Hi guys, Paul Gibson here from Hypnosis Deconstructed. I said I would do you a video on the meta pattern. I mentioned it in a previous video and I've had quite a few people emailing me, or rather Facebooking me, asking when it's going to be done. So here it is. Now I will be referring to notes on this because I did make some notes because I wanted to make sure that I got the whole premise of this pattern across and how powerful it really is. Now, the meta pattern is from NLP, or more appropriately, from a guy called John Overdurf. If you don't know who John Overdurf is, now I don't know how true this next part is, but I was told that he is the only person outside Bandler and Grinder who is allowed to change an NLP process and have it put into NLP without criticism from the creators. Now that is an accolade in itself. It just goes to show you how well thought of the John Overdurf is. So, meta pattern, 4 stages. It undermines pretty much every protocol that NLP has created, and when you look at successful therapy sessions, you'll see that this pattern underlines it. So, an interesting thing is, once you know this pattern, you'll see so many of the scripts, the protocols, the God knows what that people are selling these days. Here, have the latest Holy Grail technique, have this, have that. I bought them myself, got them, and I've just seen the meta pattern. So once you know this, once you know how to use this properly and adapt to it, then you won't need to keep spending money on other people's meta patterns or metaphors within the meta pattern. I'm digressing now. So, stage 1, associate into the problem. Stage 2, disassociate from it. Stage 3, associate into the resources. And stage 4, apply the resources from the context of the problem. In other words, collapse them together. Now, they're the 4 stages in its simplicity. To go into them in a bit more detail, stage 1, we need to understand a little bit about something called Hebb's Law. Now, Hebb's Law is a Canadian neuroscientist called Donald Hebb. Complex mathematical formula that was essentially neurons, brain cells, that fire together, wire together. The base of the meta pattern is Hebb's Law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you're thinking about something, you're activating the neurons in the pathway for that problem. If you're thinking about something pleasant, you're activating the neurons in the pathway for that pleasant feeling. What people don't have is a bridge between the problem and the solution. In other words, they've got the neuron activation from the problem, the neuron activation for the resource, but they don't have that middle bit that allows it to collapse. Welcome the meta pattern. It collapses them both, so you're just left with the resource state. I am rambling on a little bit, I do apologise, but it's really important you understand how this works. So, client comes to you, they've got a problem. You need them to associate into it. So you ask them, what's the problem? How do you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a shape? Is it moving? If it's spinning, which direction? You get them to go into the feeling, to really feel it. Now, when you associate, the sun's coming through now. When you associate, you have to associate through the eyes of what you were looking at the time. If a client says to you, oh, I can see myself, I'm doing X, Y, Z, they're not associated. They need to be looking through the eyes that they were looking through at the time. They need to be associated to it to activate the neural networks of that problem. Once they're activated, they're malleable, they're changeable. So, part 2, disassociate. Now, the important thing about disassociating is if you try and find a resource state from inside the problem, then you're only going to see the solution from inside the problem. So you've got to disassociate. Now, disassociation can be anything. A favourite one that I use, I ask them a completely random question which takes them out of the problem and makes them a little bit confused. Carl Smith has done this to me numerous times when I've been having a conversation with someone and he's walked past and just said, some bizarre thing that is just interrupted the conversation, left us both standing there going, what the hell was that? He's a bugger for that. But that's a classical pattern interrupt. Get them in the association to the problem. Then ask them a question. When you think of a green carrot, how does popcorn smell? They've got to go out of the problem to try and find the answer to that question. So you've disassociated to them. So now they're thinking outside of the problem. So now you can look for the resource state. Now you can say to them, well, how do you want to feel instead? If they want to say, more confident, for example. Okay, think of a time when you were confident. How does that feel? Where do you feel it in the body? Has it got a shape? Has it got a colour? At this point, you need to turn it up. You need to make sure the resource state is bigger than the problem state, because when you collapse them together, the strongest will survive. Get the resource state. Ramp it up. Make it bigger. If they say, oh, it's in my chest. Oh, is it spinning? Yes, it's spinning. If you spin it faster, what happens? Oh, I feel stronger. Great. Now you've got the resource state. Don't disassociate from the resource state. You need to now go back into the problem through the eyes of the resource state. What happens there, you're introducing the two... Hi guys, sorry about that. The phone decided to do a bungee jump without a cord. You need to, we got to the stage of where you're in the resource state and you need to go into the problem through the eyes of the resource. You're introducing the two neural networks. You're introducing the resource into the problem. This is why you've got to make sure the problem's smaller than the resource, because it will collapse them both. The strongest will win. So when you collapse them, don't be surprised to see a moment of juttering in the body, because it's neural networks shaping a new network. Once you have this, loop it round and around and around and around and around. Practice makes perfect. In other words, neurons that fire together, wire together. The more they fire together, the more they wire together, the more they become habituated behavior. So now get them to think about what they were feeling before through the eyes of the resource. Ask them what's different, what's changed, what's new. And then loop it in over your future pacing. Future pace it over and over and over again to the point where your client's going, okay, I get it. You literally want to make them to that state. I understand, I feel good. Then go into every similar situation with the new resource state. It's really important as well when a client's talking about the problem or talking about the resource state. You calibrate, you look for a physiological change. If they're talking about the problem, they need to reflect that in their body. Otherwise, they're just thinking about it. You have to calibrate it. You have to get them into the problem as if they were experiencing it now to activate the network, not just thinking about it without emotion. Same with resource state. If they're looking to feel calmer, more confident, when they're talking about it, when they're in it, you'll notice the resource. You notice the facial features. Let's look at a phobia. Someone comes to you with a fear of frogs. I don't know why I've just said frogs, fear of frogs. Part 1, associate. Get them to think of the last time they had that feeling. They've got to associate into it through the eyes of what they were doing at the time. Not if they turn around and say, oh, I was in my garden. That's past tense, they're disassociated. And you have to change the language to, okay, so you're in your garden. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Their language needs to come back at you. I am in, I see. Then they've associated into it. Disassociate. A random question. Ask them, do you think anyone with a size 6 shoe would ever make it in NBA basketball? They've gone. They're thinking about that now. Great, disassociated. Resourcing. Now what do you want to feel instead? Oh, I want to feel calm. When was the last time you felt calm? How did that feel? How do they do calm in the body? Does it have a colour to it? A feeling? Does it have a warmth, a temperature? Associate into it. Stage 4, collapse. I've taken that calm feeling into the body. When you think about frogs now from that calm feeling, Notice how that calm feeling, and you know, you're a therapist, you know how to do this. You've collapsed the two together. But always make sure that calm feeling is bigger than the fear of frogs. Because if the fear of frogs is bigger, the fear of frogs is going to collapse the calm feeling. Loop it, future pace it, until every time they think of the problem, it's no longer a problem. They just calm, they just think of the resource. So that's the meta pattern. I only wanted to do about 4 minutes, but I think I probably babbled on for longer. Look out for everything you do. Look out for techniques and protocols that have just simply taken the meta pattern and applied different things to it. I have to be careful here because I recently bought a protocol which was just the meta pattern. Spent a lot of money on the meta pattern, which I already know. Understand the meta pattern. Start to think about different ways you can apply it. For example, parts therapy. Look at how parts therapy uses the meta pattern. Go into the part that's causing the problem behavior. Go into the part you associate through the problem behavior via the part. You still activate the neural networks, and you disassociate when you're in parts therapy because you become a different part. Therefore, you've disassociated from the problem. In that different part, you find the resources. Then you use the resources to apply to a new way of thinking to the problem part. And then you future pace it. Meta pattern. Regression therapy. Inner child work. Meta pattern. Anyway, so I could talk about examples all day of how the structure and underlying basis, sorry, the sun's going down, that's getting darker behind me, but the underlying basis of most effective techniques is a meta pattern. Look for it next time. When you know the structure of it, you can replicate it more efficiently and more effectively. So anyway, before this room goes completely dark, this is Paul Gibson from Hypnosis Deconstructed, signing off.